Sometimes it's not enough to be reminded that Jesus hasn't left you or forgotten you. We need to declare it over ourselves, over others. No matter the season you may find yourself in, no matter the depths of darkness you're wading through, you can join him in declaring the truth that God is light upon your feet, whether or not you can see the next step, that God is your strength, even though the weight of life seems to be crushing you down. And that when your job, your marriage, your relationship, your health feels like it's coming to a dead end, there is only one God that can make dead things live again. These are his promises, and they're the only thing you need to declare over your life. So as you step into this next season or this next moment, you can declare that God's not done with you. He's just getting started. You can declare that the good work that he has started in you, he will surely complete it. You can declare that the same God that parted the seas goes before you, goes behind you. You can declare these promises over your life, over your family's life, over the people passing on the street. You can declare these truths over every circumstance, over every season of your life. You can declare that every day belongs to him and every new breath belongs to him. Because we have the power of a living God living inside of us. And this is our declaration.
God is not done with you. The same God that began a good work in our ancestors and brought it to completion is the same God that can do it again in us. First, let me begin by welcoming you to Bryant Baptist Church, where we are continuing to stand on the good work and legacy of our church forefathers and mothers. From the small but faithful band of worshipers who attended Hush Harbor in secret, to you that are gathered here today, as well as our Facebook family, welcome. As our church continues to emerge from the restrictions due to COVID, we move forward in an intentional way, introducing new capabilities to better reach those outside this church. Over the next hour, you will see oral histories from our members, as well as a well-known and respected member of the community share their perspective on American history, which for the month of February, Black History Month, we focus on the contributions that Black have made through the centuries. We also have music, spoken word, a praise dance, and a presentation by an African-American poet, author, professor, senior military spouse, and a product of this church, Dr. Latorio Faison. My hope as we stand on the history, we remember the richness that we have in Southampton County. No matter what it may look like, take for example, Nat Turner, born here, 30-year-old, as an enslaved man and preacher, who by most accounts led an effective and a sustained rebellion in all of U.S. history. Dred Scott, also born here, who along with his wife Harriet sued for their freedom after being taken to Missouri. Later, as the case was argued before the Supreme Court, the court stated that enslaved people were not citizens of the United States and therefore could not expect any protections from the federal government or other courts. The opinion also stated that Congress had no authority to ban slavery from a federal territory. Things have changed greatly. Dr. King in 1964 said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Philippians 1:6 tells us, being confident of this very thing, that he which hath begun a good work in you, perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. No matter what experience, regardless of what folks may say, however dark things may get, there is so much more to this story, and God's work in us is not done. I now present to you the oral histories.
I was in school the first 6 years, we were segregated. And it was all black teachers and like I said, just black children, and we became integrated.
When I first started school, they were segregated. I went to Borgans Elementary School, where I had the honor of having Miss Powell as my teacher, which was a blessing. And also, all of the leaders there were black, which was wonderful. The principal was black and all of the teacher. And there was a family environment in the sense that many of the teachers there knew our parents directly. It was nothing for one of the parents to stop by my home. I remember those years where Miss Drew, one of my teachers, Miss Bolden, another teacher, Miss Powell, they would stop by the house and talk to Mama about one of us. I had 6 sisters and brothers, so there was always a conversation, and it was, you knew that they cared. They took the time to talk to you and talk to your parents. When segregation came on, I was about in the 4th or 5th grade, and it was a time for a young child like myself to sort of pause and look and see what was going on.
Well, we were told that the other children were going to be smarter than we were, you know, and I think that was because of the culture that people were raised in, whereas that black people were not as intelligent as white people, and a lot of the older people believed that.
I'll never forget what happened with the first day of segregated schools. We only had maybe 3 white kids in our class and a white teacher. And one thing that got sheared in my mind was an older white teacher in front of that classroom. She looked out at us, and we were so proud of our school as black kids. She said, "I've never worked in a worse place. I'd rather be in a pig pen than be in this place." And that hit hard, and really let you know where some people stood. That right there stayed in me for a long time, that there were folks out there that did not like us, that thought that way about us, and that came from an administrator, teacher at that school. It didn't help with relationships at that school as well between blacks and white. They kept a wall always separated against us, and on top of that, shortly thereafter, very shortly thereafter, looking at the news one afternoon with Mom and Dad, one of the leaders in Alawite County, he came on TV that night and basically said his white children would never be in the school with black, and he instituted the academy there in Alawite County. And so white folks have a hard time to say, well, why don't blacks come to the academies? And many of them may not understand that we came through a time where we recognized that it was academies, Southampton, Alawite County, and others. They were put there to separate the races. So white kids and black kids did not go to school together. So
we found out that it wasn't much difference between black people and white people. You had some children that came for education and was well behaved and got education. And can't find that some came to be played and act crazy and misbehave, and it didn't matter what color they were just children being children.
Well, I appreciate just the idea that we're having Black History Month, because I think it's so important to remember what our ancestors, what they did, the achievements that they made in spite of all the obstacles and everything that came against them. So I feel like if I can remember what they did, it encouraged me that I can do with less obstacles than they had.
It makes me feel good. I see a difference because we have attorneys, unfortunately, that will walk the office floor or will see you in general and don't see you. So I think they're becoming more aware of the diversity at the firm. I work for a female African-American attorney who's been there about 30 years, and I see a big improvement as far as what how it runs every day. Like I said, we can pass an attorney, a white attorney, who will not even speak to you, but when it's time for me to notarize some documents or execute some documents, then they know my name. And yeah, I mean, that's an unfortunate thing to say, but it has been like that.
Racism still exists, and no matter what, that we still have to just try to do what we can do, be active. Active meaning we need to take and make our vote count. We need to get out and go vote. We need to tell our children and our grandchildren, encourage them that their vote is their voice, and it's so important to do. So it's alive and well still. We have come a long ways, but we still have a ways to go. Just by looking at the TV and with everything going on in the world, especially with police brutality and all of that, we still have a long ways to go.
And one thing about it, our faith in God makes the difference. It is the difference. No matter what man say sometimes, meaning shutting the door, when he shuts the door, God opens up another door. So it's very essential in keeping the faith and moving forward and not giving up.
It looked like to me, as far as the workplace, it was like my hair today. Can I go in an interview like that? We had paralegals that would come in that would be interviewed by my attorney. And I remember telling this one young lady, she came in and she had, you know, this outrageous hairstyle, and she was not dressed. What I said to her, I said, you know, we have to go further. We have to look the part. Once you get in there, you know, if you want to wear the braids, or if you want to, you know, and that's how I've seen my firm from when I first started to now.
I met a nurse practitioner. She's gonna be a doctor, but she was a nurse practitioner, and she looked just like me. She was nice and thick, just like me, and that was encouraging to see somebody that looks like me. That makes me feel like we have come a long way, because if she can do it, get these positions, then my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren will be able to do it also. So I just love to see people, you know, President Barack Obama, he set the standard. And so that lets anybody, black, white, Latino, anybody can reach that potential if that's what they want to be.
And like she said about President Obama, we got to know, as he said, the slogan, yes, we can. We can make the difference. We can beat it. We are the difference.
But we got to get out there and be proactive in a lot of issues that's causing us some problems. I've never protested, never been invited to, really don't even know how to go and protest. But I will say this, by me making my vote count, going to the polls, not just doing the election, the presidential election, but the small elections also, like for your mayor, for your governor. That's how we as a black people, we can overcome. Because we can choose who we put in power.
We have to go a step further. Be positive, know your worth, know who you are and whose you are. Speak up. Don't be afraid to voice your opinion, because you do have an opinion. I tell my daughter, you know, stand up for what you want, you know, fight for what you want. Don't think less of yourself.
A lot of things what my father would always tell me and show me would tell me that I have to work twice as hard to get the same amount that someone else gets. He also told me, he said that always know your job, know what you are doing. That will help you to gain respect at what people and how they feel about you. That you have to watch as well as pray. You have to make sure that what you know and the job that you are doing, that you're doing it to a point that it reflects not only you, but your people and also your black heritage.
Time that my mother taught and instilled in the children that set your goals, put God first, and listen to him from the right ear is the ear of God. Treat people the way you want to be treated. And it was just
It's
Awesome.
important to work hard, but it's also important to understand the management of what you get. That you can make your money, but it's also important that you know how to handle it and manage it so that you'll be able to help yourself and help others. Use your brain to the best of your ability to get done what you need to get done in your field. And be knowledgeable of what you do.
We didn't have a lot, but back then, I had the parents that instilled to be grateful and thankful. You know, my parents just taught us, if they don't call you by your name, keep walking. Don't respond to everything that someone say to you. Treat people the way you want to be treated. And it was just awesome.
That we as blacks know what we are talking about and know our jobs in our field, because if we don't, we will be taken advantage of.
To my school days, I started going to school when I was 5 years old. I didn't wait till 6 because my birthday, the school opened in September and my birthday was in January. And I had to walk from here to Bryant's school right there beside the church. I would walk there 5 days a week. When I first started, my neighbor used to carry me on his back halfway. I would get so tired of walking. I would walk there 5 days a week. On Sunday, I walked to church on Sunday. But we got kind of looking out and see how we could get rides. And we know two families would come by at a certain time on Sunday morning. So we'll kind of get in the road just in time. They will always pick us up and bring us back to the house.
See, having been here all my life, I went to elementary and high school totally segregated. Totally segregated. Well, I remember this was my early adulthood, and I think this was my first year was teaching. My father was farming, and I went with him to Emporia to purchase a part for a peanut picker. And while we were there, I listened to the language that he had with some of the employees there, and it concerned me that, you know, yes sir and no sir. And, at that time, I was in my early 20s because I graduated from college, but then I went in the Army, so I was there. And they were not returning the same courtesy to him. And on our way back, and I remember this distinctly as a conversation, and I said to him, Daddy, I noticed up there how you were referring to these young guys. These guys younger than I am, and you know, you don't have to say yes sir and no sir and that kind of thing. You can say yes or no. And then I remember, he said to me, he says, you were right, but you have to admit one thing. And I said, what was that? He says, I got what I came to get. What he was talking about, and I know for a fact that probably he didn't have the money to pay cash for what he needed to get, but he was going to have to pay for it later. But I think he used his mannerisms to help him get what he needed, because he knew that these fellows could say yes or no to him getting the parts and charging them. So that I remember. And I worked with him a long time after that. Though I was working in the school system, I worked with him a long time. And I never said anything else to him about how he was handling that kind of thing. It hit me and stuck with me, and that was more than 50 years ago. So that was key.
I got married, and after I got married, I got a job working for the government through agriculture, and I worked there for 10 years. After 10 years, I went to school to be a nurse. At night, I went to school, and then I got my diploma, and I started working at East Pavilion. And through all this time, I had 6 children. I had 3 girls, 4 girls, and twin boys. And raising them and all, at the time when I started having children, I would have to, that's when I had a break from the church. I didn't go back in a month time because you couldn't come out in the house in a month long then. And then once I had that one, go back to church, back out and back at church like that. But it was a lot of fun because I kept them in church even when they were babies. I didn't stay at home with my children when they're small. They went with me to church along with their daddy. And that's how we fellowship and all together. And growing up like that, and even when I was before I even got married, when I was in high school, my last year in high school, I went out on the island in New York. I worked out there and made my little change and came on back and took care of a lot of little things with my grandfather. Because my grandfather raised me and my grandmother. They raised me. And from then on, I got it going to church and all, fellowship and working in the church. I started working in the church, taking the offering. I was the youngest one in the church at that time.
I guess in the mid to late 50s, when the discussions came about the possibility of desegregating the schools. That's what I remember, and it sort of connected with the other struggle for demonstrating and sitting in and that kind of thing. And I went to church in Jewelville at Pleasant Plain Baptist Church, and I remember there were announcements that would be made at church about some meetings that were going to be held in the county. And as I remember, most of the meetings to talk about this, people coming to share things, happened at Rising Star Baptist Church in Branchford. That was one of the largest churches around. So that's where the people met. I was a preteen or early teen at that time, and so I do remember that, and I knew that, I felt like I knew that it was coming. There was some resistance. I had no idea what the resistance would be like, and there were a number of things that were going on that were undesirable, but because that was basically all I knew, or all that we knew, it was kind of accepted that this is the way it is, but we'll continue to work to improve it. So there were people that said there would never be integration in Southampton County, that blood would run freely in the streets or down the road. But as I remember, I'm pretty sure there was some animosity, anxieties, and what have you.
My grandfather was a working man, and he didn't like no lazy people. He don't like no lazy people. He worked on the state highway, and we'll hit that field. He had his farm. We'll hit that field 7 o'clock in the morning. We stayed in that field till 12 o'clock. I would come to the house. We'll come to the house, eat what left over, or get a can of peaches of bread that left over and ate, and go back. My grandmother, she got sick when I was 13 years old. I've been working in the house, trying to cook and try to wash and do all that ever since I was 13 years old. She had a stroke and she could not stand the heat or nothing. And that's the way that I came up.
I had taught 4 years, and we went from totally segregated school to integrated, and our school became the junior high school. And though I was teaching at the high school, I became an assistant principal. When the day we integrated, I was an assistant principal in a total different situation than I had ever worked in. So that's, and then we integrated, I just saw students and people, you know, co-workers. That was it. And my upbringing, my teaching and what I believe in, I guess with my spiritual background and stuff, that I just didn't need to be ugly and mistreat people because they didn't necessarily like me. And then I worked in that setting for the rest of my life.
When you really took notice of the races and all, well, when I was walking to school, that's when it started, when I was walking to school. When the other race, the white race, when they ride in the school bus, and they used to come, when they see us walking and done, they would roll the window down, they would say this and they would say that. So that started, that's the beginning to see the difference in the races then. And all of this will grow up in you. You never forget, I never forget how it was when I was walking to school. And they will stick their head out the door, you know, the window, and say this and say that and everything. So that started at an early age. That just then started over, you know, by the segregation, you know, the white and the black school. But and you know, but back there they was a little more friendly than they are now too. They were a little more friendly. And my neighbors was white, and we all grew up together and everything, and they the same as they were when we were growing up. They visit, they bring me things, and the same way when I grew up. But that's the only ones that I know. But a lot more I know than I, because I used to babysit for white families. I babysit for around about 6 or 7 white families, and they were really nice to me. They were very good to me.
As we come to the end of these oral histories, I want to thank all who shared their experiences on film. No amount of movie or recalled memory can truly appreciate what struggles people went through. This country was founded on the premise of all men are created equal. Yet the stain of slavery off the backs of enslaved men and women who built this country still lingers today. The history is being suppressed out of fear and ignorance. Regardless, we will stand in our history. I had the privilege a few years ago to work in the Pentagon. For the first time, I saw and interacted with people who looked and sounded just like me. Working in the medical field many times, I'm the only face of color in a room, and nevertheless providing medical care with the boldness sometimes can be a challenge. But with that same boldness that my mother gave me, but a little less charisma as Obama, sometimes I rock the boat too much. But in the words of my favorite civil rights leader, the late Congressman John Lewis, get in trouble, good trouble. I leave with you a snippet of my niece Ryan, and I give the last word to Deacon Taylor for a parting piece of advice. What do you know about Black history?
It's a time that we celebrate the Black people who changed the world.
And what's some of the famous people that are Black that changed the world?
Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Thurgood Marshall.
Do you remember anyone in particular that you know what they did?
Martin Luther King, he stood up for what was right.
What was one of the speeches he gave on the...
I have a dream.
Do you remember anything from that speech?
Yeah, I do. I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will grow up to live in a place that they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
And what does it mean to you?
It means they shouldn't be judged by the color of their skin.
Respect, self-respect. Learn to respect yourself first, then learn to respect another one. Respect. Keep the faith. We must love one another at all times. Follow the precept of our Lord. As He has loved us, we must love one another. And wheresoever we see there's a brother or sister who is in need, that's right. Reach out a helping hand. Regardless of skin, color, whomsoever. There is someone out there in need. It doesn't have to be a physical need. It doesn't have to be a financial need. whatever the need may be, and you can help, reach out there, even before you're asked to. The Lord, it's a command of the Lord that we must help each other, especially those of us that He has endowed more than others. We should, at all times, if we love one another, we will do that. And the last of all, be forgiven. Be forgiven. That's it.